I've got a quick ask anything actually, Matt. And the reason I'm going straight to you and this is perfect is because I feel like you could answer this the best since you used to sell equipment. When is it the best time or the right time to buy an automatic press? Kind of a loaded question because there's
that is loaded. There's a lot of answers to that one. So I'll give you the answer that you'll hear a lot when talking about like financing and such, that you shouldn't buy it until you can afford to pay for it outright. Right? So a lot of folks will tell you. Now, that doesn't always work, right? Sometimes you need to get more work done so you can get the paycheck to pay it off and get things moving. You might have opportunity kind of knocking on the door that is too hot to ignore. What I tell people is that if you are having to do more time spending time on press yourself, physically doing the work yourself, then you have time to go out and continue to get more sales streams, then you should be looking at either getting a new person or getting an automatic press. Now, an automatic press might cost more than a new person in the immediate, but it always costs less in the long run, right? So if you're a smaller shop and you're just trying to be able to have more time to get more sales, going to an auto may actually help you create more of that time. So that's usually a good telltale sign. Another way to look at it is if you are looking like you're having to do 8, 9, 10, 11-hour days over and over again, you're exhausting your crew, well, you got to do something, right? You need to be able to get more done in that time because your people are going to eventually hit that burnout. That's another really big telltale sign that it's time to go automatic. Also, if you're finding yourself having to struggle because you're doing a lot of high color, high detail print work on a manual press, and you're just having to put all your might into clearing that 305 mesh or higher, that's also a good telltale sign that maybe you should be looking at going automated just so you can keep that higher quality. So there's kind of a lot of answers to that one. It's kind of specific based on that shop and where they're at. Don't fall into the trap of assuming, though, that just having that auto is going to make more work magically. It will eat more work quicker and open up more time, so that seems like magic, but just because you have the auto doesn't necessarily mean that more work is going to show up on the doorstep. But if you use that extra time that you're getting, then you can go make more work.
You said the word struggle. Is there different areas of struggle that are good signs? You know, you talk about order volume, you talk about complexity, there's obviously a physical struggle. Are there any others that people should be thinking about that when you hit this threshold, time to look at this?
I mean, all those things. I mean, exhaustion, I think, is the biggest threshold, right? Like, if you're mentally exhausted by having to continuously figure out how to, jam work into an already packed schedule, if your people are exhausted because they're being overworked physically, mentally, just having to be in the building to get more done, all those things are big points. When I talk to shops, too, and I've been lucky enough to be in hundreds of shops, you always ask them, when you bought that first auto, was it too late, too early, or right in time? Across the board, 100% too late. I should have gotten it earlier. So it's one of those things where hindsight's 20/20, but if you're already kind of thinking about wanting to go to an auto, chances are you should have already gone to an auto, and you should be looking at how is the best way to start making that step forward to get it now before it starts to become more of a problem and gets too
So let's
late.
talk about the financing aspect. There's a ton of financing options. I'm sure there's more and more every day. But you talk about the thought of you should have the cash to be able to pay for it. I don't necessarily agree with, I hear that a lot, but I'm curious on your thoughts of the different options here. Is it a revenue number? Is it a margin number? What are people looking for to know I should have the cash to pay for this? And I'm assuming it may be used, it may be new, whatever it is, or finance that.
I mean, when you're talking to a lot of these financial people, they're going to tell you should have the cash for it up front, otherwise you shouldn't get it. I don't agree with that either. I think in a perfect world, sure, but if you're on your first auto, that's a lot harder. Your second auto, it's a little easier to actually go that route because you've got a piece of automated equipment to help get more throughput to increase that margin and actually put some aside. When you're a manual shop going up toward your first auto, you need to make sure that you can, of course, cover all your bills, all your expenses, and still have that margin of growth. Yeah. So the biggest thing I would say is make sure that you're allocating the funds you need to have. If you do have a couple bad months, let's say you got 3 or 4 bad months, you have to be able to cover the overhead, your people, the payments for the building that you're in, your rent, your all those resources that have to get paid for. So if you can get through 3 to 4 months with no income, I would say it's probably a good time to be able to say, okay, I can put that money then toward working with Geneva or Beacon or whomever, your local bank, credit union, and start getting some funding toward an automatic. One thing I will also say is looking at your first automatic, I highly, highly recommend not looking at a 6-color. A lot of folks will get into that 6-color 8 station, and they don't realize that you have to have a flash, that you lose 1 station, right? You have to have a cool station, then after that, so now you're 2. So that 6-color is now a 4-color, right? So you want to make sure that you plan for the fact that you're always going to lose a couple stations for those needs. So if you're looking at your first auto and you're like, I can definitely afford a 6-color, I'd say hold off a little bit longer and get that 8-color. Now, if all you do is 1 2-color work and that's really the core business, then of course, yeah, 6-color is fine. For most folks that I run into that didn't heed that advice over the years, bought that 6-color, they had to much more rapidly go after that second automatic press and kind of were kicking themselves for not just waiting another couple months and getting that slightly larger press to fit the needs of what their demand actually was.
Makes sense.